Welcome to the Heart of CIRS podcast. I'm your hostess, Melanie Joy Pensack, here to share heartfelt conversations with folks recovering from CIRS and with those special people serving the CIRS community. The podcast was created to help bring awareness to the physical, emotional, and mental experiences of folks navigating CIRS day to day. The world needs to know what CIRS folks go through for deeper empathy and understanding. Through stories and vulnerability, we can help the world understand the winding journey of CIRS recovery. Thank you for being here to open your mind and to open your heart. Today, I'm very much looking forward to interviewing Barbara Williams for the Heart of CIRS podcast. Some of you may know Barbara as the co-founder of the CIRS Group with JC Gregory. And today she is here to talk a little bit more about her own specialty in terms of helping people with their business. So Barbara is a business and health coach, CIRS and ADHD advocate and patient, writer, speaker, and a big fan of freedom. Love that. She co-founded the CIRS Group with JC Gregory in April of 2022, which is an online support community for patients dealing with CIRS. And she also runs weekly group coaching calls for entrepreneurs. Barbara also works one-on-one with people looking to find their passion and fulfillment in their work, whether in starting a new business or finding a better job. I'm so excited to be able to tap into this topic with you today, Barbara. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about it. It's like a bringing together of my two worlds. I always love an opportunity to do that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, in my counsel, talking to different patients, there are people that are shifting their work life and considering new options. And so I think this will be really helpful content from someone who has lived through it and also has that business background.
Yeah.
But before we jump into all of that, maybe you can tell us a little bit about where you are right now in terms of your CIRS recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in a privileged place because my CIRS was never super severe. I think I also didn't know how bad it was until I started feeling better. So I will say that I had normalized the GI issues, the fatigue, the brain fog, all that fun stuff. And those were like my most prominent symptoms, especially someone like you or my business partner JC. You guys went through such a severe situation with your CIRS. So I do feel very lucky that either I caught mine early or my exposure was never too bad, it seems, because I was able to feel better just after about 6 to 8 weeks on the binders. I was diagnosed in April 2022. I am still dealing with some symptoms and I am still doing the Shoemaker protocol, which sounds like a really long time, but I have taken some breaks, both for mental health, for professional reasons. Again, because my situation is on the mild side, I've been able to take time to focus on that versus I was also doing therapy to treat PTSD symptoms. And I'm now in therapy to treat more the anxiety and the ADHD side of things. So I'm progressing through that as well, which is really exciting and has been really nice to see the progress there. Just some data on where I'm at right now. I started out with undetectable MSH, and the last time I was tested, which was actually just about a month ago, my MSH is at 32, which is very exciting.
Wow.
Cautiously optimistic there because apparently there can be sometimes where your MSH jumps up higher than it really is. And so I'm actually going to retest it in the next month just to make sure that number is real. But it does seem real because I've been at 25 before and then 19 most recently. And so now it's at 32. So it seems like it's a real number, but I do think I've been feeling better. So that's a good indicator of progress. And just like my big tip or like the big thing that moved the needle for me in my CIRS journey was dealing with my environment. I did get a genie that told me endotoxins were the problem, and that gave me some insight as to what to focus on in my house. So we ended up all last year, last April, in fact, we replaced the HVAC system, the garbage disposal, the dishwasher, and started filling unused drains. We have a guest bathroom that doesn't get used very often, so we made sure to hydrate those drains regularly. And then cleaning out our washing machine. That was huge. The washing machine was smelling gross and didn't really seem like it was cleaning clothing very well. And my wonderful boyfriend took it upon himself to take that whole thing apart. It was disgusting on the inside. And so he cleaned it out. And I really think that made a huge difference in my recovery.
Wow, that's amazing. And congratulations. I'm glad that you shared about that MSH, even being in the 20s, 30s, like that gives people, I think, a lot of hope. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really great that there are people that don't have that super severe presentation because it doesn't look that way for everybody. And it's really, I think, hopeful and helpful for people to see that SIRS is a spectrum
Yes.
and that you can also make a lot of improvement. So thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about how you got into the work of business coaching. Were you doing that pre-SIRS as well?
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. Although I have to say the world's all kind of, or the stars aligned all, all around the same time. For my whole work life, since I think I got my first job at 17 working at Jamba Juice, beyond that job, when I started getting office jobs, I was always the right-hand man, or I guess right-hand woman of whoever I worked for in like an executive assistant or operations management role. And I developed a lot of skills in that department of being like the owner's representative amongst the employees and amongst outside vendors and things like that. I worked in a bunch of different industries like real estate construction and development, the entertainment industry. I lived in LA for about a decade and also even worked with the headliner here in Vegas, touring on his show. And I've also did many years in employment law, working at various law firms. Basically, what happened, I was always good at running the business and doing what was needed of me, but I didn't get any fulfillment out of those roles. And it wasn't anything against any of the people I worked for necessarily. It just, those missions there at those companies were never in alignment with what I cared about, which was helping people and supporting people. I was doing that as a role, supporting my fellow employees and the owner of the business and things like that, but I wasn't. I think what I was craving was more of a coaching or mentorship role. So that's when I started reflecting on the things that I like to do, what I knew I was capable of. And I actually first got into coaching because I got myself out of a significant amount of debt, $56,000. I will always remember that number. And once I did that, I thought, oh, you know what? I could probably help people do this. And I did. I started coaching people on debt, dealing with debt, and especially with medical bills, with CIRS. I feel like it's come in handy in that world as well. But I got involved in some communities through my coaching and realized that as I was building my business, I could turn around and help others that were just getting started. And then I started to fall in love with the actual business building elements of what I was doing and also of helping others do the same. That all happened probably about 3 years ago. So again, like right around the time I was diagnosed with CIRS.
I love learning all this about you. I never knew.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and all of those skills are so great to bring then into the SIRS community, managing your money. And it's got to be fun to be a part of the creative process for people in the startup.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I've noticed with coaching, and I'll say this, I guess, cavalierly, even though maybe it's not. Coaching is coaching is coaching. And I'm sure you've recognized this as well in your work too, Melanie. Like when you are helping someone, no matter the goal, you're helping them get past themselves.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter where they're trying to get to when it comes to getting out of debt. There's behavioral patterns around money or around making money or saving it or spending it that you have to help them see in themselves in order to make the changes they need to make. And then the same can be said about business. And of course, also, as we know about CIRS, there's certain things that and maybe they're not even in their own way so much as there's just so much information that it's overwhelming and they don't know what step to take next. So sometimes it's just clearing out the noise and helping them determine what their priority is in that process and help them pick a first step. Because generally speaking, any forward movement is good. Yes, there might be an optimal way of doing things, but I think helping someone discover what's going to be the easiest thing for them to start doing first, help them build momentum, help them feel good about a win or two in the beginning so that they have more motivation to keep going through the long haul of whatever it is their goal is. So yeah, it's really exciting and fulfilling to be able to do that for people. And yeah, I really love it.
I've worked with Barbara a little bit myself. She helped to be a part of launching the online membership program I have for mental and emotional health, the practice portal, which there's an area for CIRS patients. And the information and the second set of eyes was just super helpful to be able to stay up to date with everything that's happening technology wise and just to have somebody else see what
Yeah.
your work is and to give feedback on it of things that you might not notice. It's so valuable.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, I think it is. Even for me, working on my business, I'm glad I get to work with JC on the CIRS group because we get to bounce things off of each other. But for most people, I mean, I'll throw out a number like 90% of the, people just getting started on a business are probably doing it on their own. So it can be really nice to have not only the accountability of a coach or somebody like that, but also somebody who has done it before or can give some insight or some feedback so that it's just saving you some time and energy in the beginning when you're taking shots in the dark.
So to bring it back to CIRS, we know that this is really a great opportunity to rethink your work or how to work. And for some people, that's like a necessity to actually begin to think about working online, remote work.
Mhm.
What are some questions that people should ask themselves about their work to help make the decision of, do I go back to work? Should I start an at-home business? Where would you guide people in the very beginning of that?
Yeah, this is such an important question, and it's a hard answer. I'll just warn the listener about that. It's the best place to start a side hustle or a new business should be from a place of some stability. And I know that's like, well, great, I have CIRS. There's nothing stable about that. And I totally understand that. So, given that fact, depending on where you are with CIRS and also where you are with your job, if you can find a job that pays the bills, but is maybe less or the least taxing on you, energy wise, mentally, all that good stuff, that can be a good place to be temporarily while you get through the protocol or while you figure that out for yourself. I don't encourage people to quit their job and go all in on a business from nothing, unless, of course, you have a significant amount of savings, some kind of financial runway, or maybe you have a really supportive partner that you can depend on financially while you get things going. Those are better scenarios to start a business. So for it depends on what your specific situation is. So if you do have a job that you're okay with and but you do dream of something better, that's a really good place to start. And if you're not there yet, if your job is almost impossible to do, or maybe you don't have a job at all, I would look at first, and also again, like you don't have that financial stability and you do need some income coming in. I think that it is a good idea to find something that you can do. There are a lot of remote jobs out there. There are websites like Upwork and Fiverr that you can actually do like little gigs here and there if you do graphic design or virtual assistant work, or depending on what your skill set is. And of course, this is stuff that I would help someone one-on-one with in a coaching session. So it's hard to make it general enough to apply to everyone, but everyone needs to reflect on themselves as far as what they're capable of and get some stability first and foremost. From there, you can start to grow your business on the side. Do, even just honestly, even just 15 minutes a day. I know that sounds like, what can you do in 15 minutes? But if you have the bills paid and you've got a little bit of stress relief on that side, you can start at 15 minutes a day and you can grow into maybe it's an hour a day or a couple hours a day. Or maybe you find a job where they do let you do your own thing because you're just waiting for a phone call or waiting for someone to walk in. Maybe that's the kind of job to look for so that you do have the time to work on your side hustle. It's a hard thing to navigate, and everyone is different depending on their health level and obviously their financial needs. Some people need less income than others. So that's something to suss out probably with a coach, or just start to make a list and self-reflect with yourself on what it is that you need and what are your non-negotiables, and then go from there.
Yeah, I love that. Safety financially is so important. Maybe you just need, if you need to completely switch jobs, just taking whatever that remote job is to fill the space. And then
Right.
once you feel like, okay, you're getting the ground back underneath you to start the process of bringing in some new income with a new job, because it takes some time to go through that process and you don't want to feel so much pressure, I think, on the new type of work. It's nice then you have a little income coming in to start to dabble, as you talked about.
Yeah, it's such a learning process when you're building a business. You'll first take on clients. If it's a service-based business, you'll take on clients that you actually don't like working with. I know it's hard to say that, but it's true. Everybody is going to encounter somebody who it's just not the right fit. And it's going to be so much better to be able to interview clients as if you're evaluating them on whether you will be fulfilled working with them versus I really need a client. So let me take anybody and everybody who comes along. It's a better place for everyone. I mean, you're serving the client better by sending them off to somewhere else if they're not a good fit for you. So it's a win-win for everyone. I definitely encourage people to start businesses with that in mind. So they're, again, like you were just describing, not taking things out of desperation.
This is a bigger jump and a bigger switch, but let's say that there's a teacher or something and the school's moldy, or all the schools in their neighborhood or town are moldy, and they know they're not going to be able to go back to teaching and they want to start a different profession. What are some questions or things that people can think about in terms of, gosh, maybe this is an opportunity for me to explore something else I might like? Where can they get some ideas of how to start that?
Yeah, I like that exploration phase. It can be fun. I always ask people, what if this is the fun part? Because sometimes people are stressed thinking, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and I'm already in my 30s or 40s or 50s, and they get stressed like they should have already known. I struggled with that question throughout all of my 20s and a lot of my 30s myself, so I feel that pain. I did create a 7-day challenge email, but I'm going to go through the steps here with you because it can be pretty quick. But if anybody wants this in writing, they can go to actlikeBarbara.com/TSOL. That's T as in Tom, S as in Sam, OL. And you can sign up for this 7-day challenge. I just send an email every day for 7 days to ask you questions on this exact topic. But basically, to answer the actual question and what you would get in that email that I just described is that you want to think about the work that you have done and what aspects of it that you love doing or even liked doing. And that can be one list. You can, and the jobs don't have to be paid jobs, just any skills or any tasks that you do regularly or have done in the past that you enjoy. And you can make that list. Second list, what things are you good at? And this is potentially a different list. It could be a lot of the same, but what you can do to improve the second list on what you're good at is actually ask people. You can, if you have a good relationship with your boss or past bosses or coworkers, those are great people to ask. You can ask your family, friends. You want to find out what people think you're good at, what they come to you for. That's a really good list to have alongside what you love. And then the third question to ask yourself is who or what do you care most about? This can be the values that you hold dear. It could be a group of people, or I mean, it could even be animals. Obviously, it could be anything that you really have a passion for helping or working with or being around. Maybe it's an industry, maybe it's a certain type of charity or foundation. You can ask yourself some of those questions. And from there, and I go into more detail. There's more questions to ask yourself, but those are the three main ones to help yourself decide what to do next. And in the case of a teacher, the obvious one things that I would probably ask in that situation are, do you enjoy working with students? Do you enjoy the act of teaching itself? Because if that's the case, there are possibly homeschooling type of things that you could do. A lot of parents are homeschooling their kids, I've noticed, and might need help in that. You know, might want to send them to someone for some of that schooling, even though it's quote unquote homeschooling. But you may also want to go into tutoring. And again, all of this stuff can now be done remotely, which is great to some extent. Obviously, depends on the age and obviously the child or the student that you're working with. But yeah, I would explore a lot of those avenues related to what you were doing, because that will probably be an easier transition. And then the best advice I can give beyond all of that is once you have some ideas and maybe you have a few different ones, find a way to try them. Whatever that is, the example I like to give is I at one point, I thought I wanted to be a professional organizer because I really liked taking everything out of a cabinet, let's say, and then putting it back together and making it look pretty. And it was always very satisfying to me. So instead of launching into a business doing that, I just asked a friend who happened to be pregnant and with a toddler. I asked her, would you like me to organize your pantry? And of course, she said yes. So I went to her house and I organized her pantry. And I think I did a pretty decent job. I enjoyed it, But it was actually a lot of work and it took way longer than expected. And I realized in that one little experiment that I probably didn't actually want to do that. Certainly not full time, happy to do it as a gift to a friend or happy to do it in my own home. But it was a great experiment for me to very safely try out my idea and get more information, which was actually, this isn't good for me. I don't quite want to do this, isn't quite right for me. So I definitely encourage people to find a safe way to try out the thing if they can.
I love that. You can come over and organize my anytime.
Perfect. I'll book my ticket.
So when you're working with people, SIRS patients, non-SIRS patients, what are some of the internal barriers people face when they're starting this process?
The thing that I think I run into a lot is people are trying to do too much at once. And I'm so guilty of this, so absolutely no judgment. It can be overwhelming when you're in that mode of self-development or shifting careers. There's a tendency to want to do too many things at once. And I think, especially if you're dealing with SIRS, you have to be very patient with yourself, give yourself grace, still push yourself, still get that accountability that you need to make sure that you're not putting off something that's important to you. But there is a balance to be struck somewhere in there to just, if you can, build one habit at a time and build it very slowly on a very small scale. It's a very obvious example is somebody who wants to get into shape and they've never gone to a gym before in their life and they decide, I'm going to go to the gym 6 times this week. Everyone who's ever done that, and a lot of us have learned this lesson the hard way, you know that that person's going to fall off by week 2 because they're going to be so sore from working out 6 times that week, and it's going to be not fun and more difficult than they expected, and life is going to happen and they're going to fall off that habit. So I think the shorter answer to your question would be basically, I find that the people who do well with a coach, the reason they're doing well with a coach is because that coach can help them prioritize what is the most important thing. Maybe they can have a couple other goals too. That's not terrible. But if they have a one non-negotiable North Star, this is the main thing I want to make sure no matter what I still do, that's that can be really helpful for not only forward progress, but also just helping people feel like they're succeeding. Because if you have like a list of 5 or more tasks that you want to suddenly start doing next week, and you only do 2 of them, you're just going to feel like crap about the other 3 that you didn't do. And so flipping that script and helping people see what's the most important thing, let's tackle that first, I think is really important.
Yeah. And it's so humbling trying to jump into something new, especially nowadays with all the tech and everything.
Yeah.
It's really great to be able to give yourself some grace, like when you're learning new programs online and new platforms and editing software, Canva, Instagram,
It's
getting
never ending.
there's like a big list of things to get out there. And I had to very systematically update. I've always been tech oriented, but I definitely had to do an update in this last year to just get on board with all of the video pieces and things that I need to use. And now it's like second nature. I know how to use it very well. But yeah, taking it like little by little, step by step is so helpful. And to have a coach to be able to break that down is really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. Like some people might think, oh, I want to build a website. Okay, cool. There is really great website building options out there now, but they might not think, oh, wait, I need to make my own graphics. Those don't just pop out of nowhere. And it maybe seems obvious to somebody who's run a business before, but to somebody who's just getting started, you don't know when you open up, let's say, a Squarespace account that maybe the graphics there are going to be limited and you'll want your own logo and your own this and that. And you mentioned Canva. I had a steep learning curve with Canva. Oh my gosh, thank God JC's such a beautiful graphic designer because I can't I'm doing okay with it now, but man, that is something that I do tend to hire out. And that's another topic, that's a side topic that we don't need to get into, but there is always the option of hiring things out, which again goes back to the first thing I said, which was you want to start a business from a place of some financial stability or at least some savings because there will be moments where spending money
Right.
rather than time is going to be the better bet. And you want to have the ability to choose that if you need to.
Absolutely. If you just absolutely cannot stand creating things online, like I thought one of my side jobs was going to be creating a bunch of speech therapy materials for pediatrics for this
Mm,
website called Teachers Pay Teachers.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, I know a ton of things that I could do just for some passive income to make money coming in on these materials. I tried it like you did with your organizing for one day, and I was like, this is terrible. I'm
Nope.
not enjoying this at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's great to be able to try some of these things out and just hire out if you realize there are parts of it you don't like to do.
Yeah, totally. And that's okay. Oh my God, the first thing I hired out was my accounting. My bookkeeping is not even like complex or anything like that. It's pretty simple, but I will not do it. And I know that about myself. So if I don't want to absolutely dread tax season, I have to, like, that is money that is well spent for
Yeah.
me personally. So yeah, you just know, you learn about yourself real quick when you're building a business and you find out what your strengths and weaknesses are really quick.
What do you enjoy the most about working with CIRS patients in this type of work?
Mm. Yeah, I think I just love helping them see the possibility of financial freedom in addition to the health freedom. They're for people who have discovered SIRS, it's 9 times out of 10, it is not the first illness they thought they had, and so they've gone down lots of rabbit holes, seen lots of doctors, spent a lot of money and time and energy trying to figure out their chronic illness. To be able to improve themselves on a health front is amazing, and to watch them be able to get better. I mean, our colleagues here in the SIRS space, other practitioners, other group leaders that I know you and I both know, and each other. I think it's amazing to be able to see each other and see how much better we're doing now than we used to do, and to see those improvements. So on that, once people have gotten to some stability with their health, they now, I think, are primed for the thought that there are possibilities out there. There's some motivation to see what actually they can do and what they're capable of and push themselves even more. And so, what better way to do that than to no longer be financially dependent on someone else? And yes, of course, having your own business, growing your own business is not maybe the safest thing or the most stable thing to a lot of people. But I would also argue that relying on some boss that maybe you don't get along with for your paycheck every couple weeks can also be a very stressful, and I don't know, that's a really hard place to be. I've been there most of my working life. I was working for someone else with a W-2 and the whole thing. And it's just not, I think that when you can work for yourself and you know that the effort you put in is going to result in directly to the income that you make, I think that's a level of freedom that a lot of people, especially those impacted by SIRS, can really appreciate because it gets them out of that place of dependence on someone or something else. And of course, you know, more importantly, most people who work for themselves can work from home, or they obviously have some control over where they're working. And that, of course, is really important for SIRS patients as well. And also making your own schedule. I'm not a morning person, so I tend to make sure all of my calls start at 10 a.m. or later. And most jobs wouldn't be cool with that
Yeah.
unless I was bartending or something. But yeah, that's another thing. I think that's a really important thing for people with SIRS to think about when they're considering starting a business, is just all the control that you end up getting over your schedule and where you're working and what you're doing can be really empowering.
Yeah, I'm so glad you just finally got to the place of empowerment because I think
Mm,
that is one of the biggest gifts of working with SIRS patient in some context is seeing them going from that disempowered state back into their empowerment. Like you said, of being able to make choices and do things that are like the right thing for them finally. Like maybe this
absolutely.
could be the opportunity to do what actually works for you and reassess. And likewise, I lived in California for a long time, and my speech pathology license is in California. And so I don't start with some of the contracts that I do with school based therapy until 11:30 East Coast time.
Nice. Yep.
So this has been really helpful in a SIRS recovery because I wake up without an alarm clock. I eat breakfast really slow. I meditate. I have a really relaxed morning, do the laundry, wash my clothes, wash the dishes, take a shower, and then I'm like starting my day. And it feels really good to just be on my own cycle and to be able to listen to my body that way. And so if people can begin to reframe what's happened into, oh, okay, this might be the opportunity to make what works for me or my family or my relationship better, that can be such a place of empowerment.
Yeah, I'm so glad you outlined like how your morning looks because that's another thing to do when you're thinking about what you want to do and whether it's a different job or starting a business, draw out your ideal day. And obviously, we'd all just like sit around and do our favorite things all day if we didn't have to make money, sure. But aside from that, even just drawing out or writing out what your morning routine would look like if you didn't have this set time to work, like you just described. I mean, that's a beautiful illustration of the possibility when you do work for yourself. There's no more last minute trips that your boss is making you do or conferences where you hate the topics and you dislike the people and you have to go. And there's just different you just get that control over what your day actually looks like and how you set up your day is so important and so needed for a SIRS patient to support themselves in the healing process like you just described. So, yeah, that's a great example.
Can you share a story about maybe a SIRS patient or somebody that you've worked with that's made some changes and how it's been positive?
Yeah, there's a couple that come to mind. I know there was one that I worked with more on the health side than anything, although he did end up also getting into a place of finding a better job, but he was eating terribly before and it was all his choice. I didn't push him to carnivore at all, but he was like, "You know what? I'm an all or nothing person. Let me just do carnivore." And I think with the help of the accountability that coaching brings, but really just he had some really good ambition and drive to get his life on track. He stuck to the diet and lost significant weight. I want to say 8 pant sizes, which is intense. And I know not everybody who has SIRS can lose weight like that, but I think it just goes to show how much inflammation he was carrying around. With all of that, he also cut alcohol, which is important to note because he was so much more clear-headed, had the energy to look for a better job and got a better job. And then on top of it, also found volunteer opportunities to develop skills, to teach younger people because he's a programmer. So there's a lot of opportunities to teach that and mentor people. And so he's really been enjoying that discovery process of not only bettering himself, but also helping others better themselves. And that kind of leads me to, some of the other examples in my head of how often it is that SIRS patients, when they do start to feel better, so often they want to turn around and like work in the health space, whether it's in SIRS specifically or just in health coaching or maybe even become a practitioner themselves because they know how important this is now and they want to help others get what they got, which was their health back. So there's a lot of people in the SIRS world, myself, and I think you included, where we were patients first, and then we realized, you know what, we could actually potentially make a difference in this space and pursued whatever certifications or whatever education we needed to help people in that realm as well. I've seen people do that. But also, I've also seen people do non-SIRS related or health related stuff. One husband with his wife, he built an Etsy store and they were able to sell some really cute merchandise with quirky phrases. And they're a gluten-free family. So I remember one of their popular t-shirts was Yeet the Wheat, which I thought was really cute. They made a decent profit over Christmas just because their designs were adorable. And there's so many, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. There's so many platforms and services out there now where all you need to do is be a graphic designer, basically, and have an idea of obviously what would be popular. And that's a big if. That's a skill to develop as well. And then you create designs and you can just put it on stuff the printer handles and ships to the customer. So you're not even involved in the fulfillment of that. And they were able to make a decent profit. And again, the husband had a full-time job, but the wife was, I think, a stay-at-home and was homeschooling the kids. So they certainly had their hands full, but they were still able to do that on the side as well. Yeah, those are a couple stories that I keep up or come to the top of my mind, memorable things that I've seen.
Yeah, that's so inspiring. I'm wondering, based off of that, are there any books or courses or YouTube pages or simple things people could maybe check into or read or listen to
Yeah.
when they're considering starting a new business?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of a guy named Donald Miller. He's based out of Tennessee. Not that that's important because all of his stuff is online, but he's written several books. He's a marketing guy, but he has a background in script writing, in fact. And one of his books, his most popular book is The Story Brand. And that is basically a way to market yourself, your business, your products, your services. And so that book is a really, really great introduction to how to handle marketing and to learn about it, especially if you are either starting from zero or you have dabbled in marketing and branding for yourself and you just feel like you're not getting anywhere. But he has a book called Story Brand and then another one called How to Grow a Small Business, which actually goes into all of the operations of a business. And I think he puts it almost in a blueprint form. So it's very tactical, tangible advice that you can take action on. I really like how he lays everything out in his book. For people who are more in the career switching mindset, maybe not so much business, I really like a guy named Ken Coleman. He's under the Dave Ramsey umbrella, under Ramsey Solutions, if anybody is familiar with him. Ken Coleman is basically a career coach and he has a daily radio show. Well, it's like a podcast now as well and a YouTube channel where he'll take callers who don't know what they should be when they grow up or whatever their question is and he'll walk them through. And even if you don't call in or have any dealings with them, just listening to other people answer those questions and think for themselves and you'll see yourself even in someone who's completely in a completely unrelated field as you are, I think. And I know I remember listening to his show and it was really helped me reflect on what was important to me and just hearing those examples was really helpful. And then a couple other people that I follow are Christy Wright, who used to be with under the Dave Ramsey umbrella and has gone off on her own. She's a business coach. And then Amy Porterfield is a big course person, course and email list building person. And she always does a lot of really great tips on her Instagram and has courses and all kinds of fun stuff to help you. And also a podcast. Both of them have podcasts. So those are all good resources I like to refer people to.
Great. So if people are sold and ready to jump in and want to work with you, what is your ideal client? How can people get in touch with you?
My ideal client is anyone driven and ambitious, and you've done well for employers, and now you want to take that energy and put it towards something that's yours, that you can build for yourself or your family. That's always exciting to me. Anybody who's just not happy, not satisfied with what they're working on currently or what their job is, and they want to figure out what that next thing is. Or maybe you have the idea and you want to start a business, you know what it's going to be, but you have no idea how to get started. Those are my people. Happy to help you guys there. Of course, there's more information at actlikebarbara.com. And yes, that's Act Like Barbara is my handle on all social media. At one point, I did want to act. And that is where that came from. And it just stuck. And I'm not going to change it now. So that's where that comes from. But my website's great for that. Also, some handouts and that challenge that I mentioned earlier are all there to grab as you get on your way and start learning more. I do have a Substack as well. You can sign up there for that. It's also Act Like Barbara is the handle there. And of course, if you're more on the CIRS side of things, you're still healing from that, you can always come to the CIRSgroup.com. And that's where we have our online community, me and JC. And I do talk about business and a little bit there, not a ton, but I'm happy to help people who are exploring their options there financially, or they need some financial help. That's a good place to go. And you can also ask the whole group, the whole membership some of your questions and you'll get a lot of good feedback there. And of course, if anybody just wants to email me the old school way, it's just info@actlikebarbara.com.
Wonderful. Let's close up with a SIRS related question. Come full circle back to the
Yeah.
SIRS. I would love to know right now within the SIRS community, you're very active there in different ways and did an amazing job and you're hosting in the SIRS Summit and work with that this past year. What are you most excited about right now in the SIRS community?
Gosh, there's a lot, but I'd say the top thing is just all the new research that's being done at a grassroots level. I know you're doing your own research on, and people like Christian Navarro Torres and even the doctors, Dr. Peg, everyone's realizing, well, no, they always knew, I think, especially with Dr. Shoemaker and his focus on publish, 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 but we do need research. We need to learn more. There's a lot of people that get left behind in the SIRS community because they have complex cases, they've got comorbidities, they've got some things to figure out that's not just as simple as environment and the protocol, which by the way, those things are not. But I think that the focus now on figuring out like the new tools and supplements that can support people beyond just what the protocol provides. I think that is really exciting. And I also love the focus that's being put on the mental health side, all the work you're doing, Melanie, and the realization that SIRS can be a traumatic thing for somebody going, the rejections from doctors who say nothing's wrong, the rejection from family who say that, they're not sick, so how are you sick? It's all in your head. Like, oh, all the awful things that I know people go through. I think people are getting more aware of that mental toll and are taking better care to take care of themselves, advocate for themselves. And I think hopefully also the doctors are starting to be more sensitive to that as well and more gentle with their patients. So those are probably my top exciting things right now for SIRS.
I actually get goosebumps listening to all of that. I'm a part of it, so I know it's happening, but to just hear it summarized in that way, it is really important and it's exciting because it really validates people in their experience. And just the starting of all of that is going to make a big difference for people now and down the road, really.
Yeah, totally. I'm excited for it. I mean, it sucks that it had to get to the point that it did, and so many people have struggled through it, but I think we're turning a corner on that, and I'm very hopeful.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing all of your rich wisdom and knowledge. This is really a gift to the service community to have somebody with this type of background from everything from starting a business, how businesses work, the marketing side, working with the financials, helping to get things organized. This can really make a big difference for people that are ready to move forward in their lives with more empowerment. So thank you so much for continuing to work with this population. And it's great to see you healing and thriving. And thanks for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much for all the work you do too. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you for listening and for your kind attention. To keep in touch, follow the Heart of SIRS podcast on Instagram. You can visit melaniepensack.com/the Heart of SIRS to donate. Your generosity helps to keep this podcast growing. May the awareness of SIRS spread far and wide, helping to change millions of lives for the better.